Sarnia, I'm Katie Horvath. This is called Into the City. I'm here today with Brian White. Brian is a current city councillor looking for a seat as a city and county councillor in the upcoming election. Thank you for coming in to chat with me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So for those who don't know you, who maybe are just tuning into all of this, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running?
Sure. Well, I'm 43. I just turned 43. And I'll try and keep this really short because 43 is a long time, and there are a lot of experiences in my life that led me to here. But the reality today is my main focus, and how I define myself is I'm a father of two, one child who's very complex special needs, and that takes up a lot of my time, and that helps me in the outside world in so many ways that are undefinable at this point, but it allows me to practice so much patience and to tackle problems that seem like they wouldn't be a problem for anybody else, but because they are for us in our little world, it allows me the opportunity to come up with some very creative solutions to seemingly mundane things, which actually applies quite a bit when you're talking about municipal politics and running a community.
Right.
And of course group dynamics are huge in that as well. I'm a filmmaker. I'm educated via Niagara College. I went away and then I moved away to Nova Scotia, spent a great number of years in Nova Scotia and living in a Cree community in northern Quebec with about 1,000 mostly Cree community members at the time who largely lived off the land. I've traveled every province and territory except for Nunavut, so I've seen the country. I've worked in different parts of the country. I've spent a lot of time in places that I think most people wouldn't have been able to see in their lifetime. So I've been very blessed, and in that journey I've met a lot of great people who've inspired me to do things that I never would have imagined myself doing. Typical child of a broken home, things just weren't your average nuclear family when I was growing up. A lot of chaos and a lot of distress, and it was up to me as an adult to figure out a way to get out of that and to make sure that I wasn't repeating patterns for my own children, which in turn allowed me to A, get sober, but B, I think ask the right questions and be the right kind of advocate for the special needs that my kids do have. So that allows me, I think, to be a very open-minded, well-researched kind of person. I certainly let a lot of things roll off my back. I take everybody for their word at face value, and most importantly, the end result is what matters. Sometimes we have to take a few detours to get there, but if your intentions are good and you're doing things in a good way, then I can certainly work with you and have a lot of respect for you. And that's really the kind of person that I am and why I choose to put myself out there for public service.
Okay. And what made you decide to switch from city councillor into a city and county role? Yeah,
well, city county was really my goal, and I ran in 2010 for city county and I didn't make it. And then 4 years ago, I actually initially signed up for city and county. And with a lot of stuff happening at home, a lot of challenges that we were facing, I realized I should probably step back from the dual job and focus just on city council. And that allowed me an opportunity to get my feet grounded and quite frankly, work in a lot of the areas of municipal politics that were not my strong point. City council at the lower tier deals with a lot of planning and the infrastructure issues, and although I could read lots of stuff about that and take online courses about planning and stuff, which I did to try and prepare, when your feet are on the ground and you're finally in the rooms having these discussions, it's a whole other thing. So it allowed me time to absorb some of that and to learn some of those dynamics, and so this time I wanted to take that foundation and spread my wings out in the county where I can discuss more things that are in more of my bailiwick. Number one, relationship building with the other communities I think is incredibly important with our neighbors in Lambton County. Working at the county level will also allow me a little bit more of an opportunity to draw on some of the resources I have in Toronto and Ottawa. Lots of good friends in government and in opposition. Ultimately, my strong suits are in social issues. That's county stuff. Cultural issues, that's county stuff.
Right.
Long-term care and health stuff, that's all at the county level. So I'm really looking forward to spreading my wings out there and hoping to, you know, offer up a fresher perspective than maybe what we've seen in the county for the last little while.
Okay, great. So we'll get into now just kind of your overall reflections. As somebody who was on the council, you'll obviously offer a little bit different of a perspective as people on the outside. So just in general, could you comment maybe some things that went well in the last term and some things that maybe could be improved upon for the newer council?
Right, thank you. Good question. Some of the things I think that went really well were organizational transitioning. When we were elected 4 years ago, there was largely a new administration who had brought some talents and skills from outside of the city, and that with a newer looking council really worked well to begin the process of building Sarnia up as a more progressive community. I think what I heard back then and what I've continued to hear is that Sarnia is behind in a lot of areas. And what has gone well is we've managed to basically just rebuild an IT department that was virtually non-existent, really stuck behind, and in fact in a position that a number of the professionals that we pay every day to show up and to do professional duties on behalf of taxpayers, those folks were not even able to do some of their basic jobs anymore because of the lack of IT infrastructure. So we've done some of that. We've done some of the reorg in the building that has allowed things to be a little bit more efficient, be a little bit more open and transparent. Obviously there's a lot of stuff we've done with actual council meetings, like putting them online, making sure that agendas are available to councillors a couple of days sooner than before, so that those of us who are tasked with reading 500, 800 pages worth of material have a little bit more time to consult with people and have a little bit more time to research some of the concepts in those agendas.
Could you clarify just for people watching, what is the time frame? How much time do you guys have now to read those?
Yeah, so for a Monday meeting we have we get our agendas the Tuesday prior. So by about 6 o'clock in the evening, my electronic agenda will be available for me. For those of us who get it delivered, it's usually sometime between 5 and 6.
Just short of a week then.
Yeah. And prior to that, it was 2 days less than that. So in fact, you know, if I think of the last council meeting we had, I don't want to date this video too much, but the last council meeting was 800 something pages. So imagine getting that on a Thursday night and having to be prepared for Monday afternoon.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and feeling confident that you've got all your bases covered and you've consulted with the kind of people that you would wish to consult with on those issues, especially when business is 9 to 5 often, and a lot of folks are unavailable on weekends. So that's a big change. That's allowed us to be, I think, more responsible and respectful to the staff who put the kind of work into those reports to make sure that we've been able to read them thoroughly.
Right. Yeah.
So some of those things I think we've done really well. We've built committees that are stronger. More people now are applying to committees than ever before. The last round of committee calls brought in far more applicants to join, to volunteer, to help their city before, whereas 4 years ago we were, you know, asking people and assigning people to multiple committees just to help fill the spaces. So our public engagement, I think, is working really well and has worked well in the last term. And you know what, we've started to actually discuss some of the difficult things, like should we take on a little bit more debt to help build build back up some of the infrastructure. And so we've basically inventoried the entire city in terms of what buildings do we have, what do the parks have, what equipment do the parks have, what do the roads look like. All of that stuff, along with the new IT capabilities, has allowed us to properly identify that stuff, the condition it's in, and then start towards an asset management plan, which wasn't in place before.
Is that going to be available for the public before? Because I know maybe about a year ago, was looking where can I get a list of all the city assets, and wasn't there.
Yeah, Yeah, it will. It will be. I'm confident it will be, but that's still a work in progress. So those are the things that we wish we could just walk in and flip a switch on. And again, if you've got a big vision like I did 4 years ago, and you walk in and you say, and we need to do this, we need to do that, and we need to do all the way down the list. You know, you scare your staff, number one, who also understand that many of these things take grants. Many things are actually already planned.
Right.
They're in the works, and then you realize that some of this stuff you're actually planning 4 years down the road, 10 years down the road, and unfortunately somebody's road who's turned to gravel, you can say, yeah, it's in the books 8 years from now.
Right.
That might not make them very happy. And there are ways you can work around that, like raising taxes even more, taking on more debt.
Right.
Or you can wait till the sewer and the water upgrades happen in their neighborhood, and at which point they will get, you know, a rebuilt road.
Right.
So those are the kinds of things that, you know, we sort of learned early on, and those don't fix themselves overnight. And unfortunately, that's the stuff that maybe we could have done better, is communicate some of those things. We've done a ton of work, but unfortunately I still hear a lot of the same complaints that I was making 4 years ago, justifiably too. Justifiably. And if you don't necessarily understand that some of it is in motion, or some of it, because there was so much to do, we just never got to, you know, then perhaps we could have done a better job at communicating some of that stuff out.
Okay, fair enough. So on that note about the infrastructure deficit, how would you approach that, balancing the backlog, which is, last I heard, close to 300 million in infrastructure backlog, but with balancing your budget and not necessarily having to go to the taxpayers for more?
Well, that's the age-old question, right? So it becomes a very complex solution, like how do we grow our tax assessments? How do we get more people into the city paying taxes so that it's not up to you and I to have to pay more? So that's part of the solution. It's to build a community that people want to come to and want to invest their dollars in, whether it's buying a house and relocating their family, or whether it's bringing a small business and hoping to hire some people who can then buy a house and raise a family. So that's part of the longer term visioning that we have to do in order to make some progress on that. The other part is to limit development in areas where we currently don't have roads and sewers. It's called densification. So if we have areas of town that are prime for redevelopment and revisioning, like Mitten Village, how can we rebuild some of that area up so that we can attract new residents to new beautiful places to live, without having to put in another new road and another new sewer line and another new water main. So working on densification is part of the solution as well, because we can increase our tax base without spending more on infrastructure, which means then we have more money to fix the infrastructure we already have. And keeping in mind that $300 million mark is just the stuff that's in absolute, total, complete bottom of the scale failure. That's not even including the stuff that also should be repaired. Right. And then the other stuff that seriously needs to be maintained, and we should be planning for repairs. Like, that's just the stuff that is so far beyond failure rate. It's shameful. So
what do you think, sorry to interrupt, what do you think is about the approximate number then in total repairs that need to be done infrastructure?
Oh gosh, we're certainly up into the $500 million or more of stuff that if it were a perfect world and we had, you know, this magic money bag, I would imagine we would be sending crews out to, you know, 70% of the city right now to do some serious repairs. I mean, it's a problem, and you don't always see it. It's the underground infrastructure as much as it is the roads and things like that too, and that's why the timing sucks for some people, because we have to wait until we're able to repair the sewer lines as well, because you don't want to have to dig up a road twice. So sorry that your road's going to wait a little longer, but when it gets to that part of the list for sewer upgrades, that's when your road's going to get done, because you just have to make sure you're best managing it. And so the other part of that is, I think it's a good opportunity to have the discussion, and perhaps strike another committee of citizens and developers and councillors and planners just to simply talk about infrastructure financing and see if it's time, not to borrow $300,000, but to maybe borrow 30 million, maybe borrow $40 million, get a little bit of a head start on some of the real visible stuff, and signal to the greater community out there, outside of Sarnia, out in Vancouver, out in Calgary, out wherever, signal to them that we're ready to invest in our own city, which then shows them that it's a safe place to come and for them to invest their money as well.
Right. So I'm just going to ask you one more question about current council, then we'll go right into your specifics moving forward for this election. So Centennial Park, that was a divisive topic in St. Linton. On the positive side, it's done. The park is usable again.
Yeah.
A lot of work went into it. On the negative side of things, it was criticized going over budget, placement of the stage. There's some criticisms as well.
For sure.
So if I could just get you to comment overall on your take on that, and maybe how kind of that information was or wasn't communicated back to the public.
Right. Well, so this project goes back to the last council, number one. So I had the distinct pleasure of seeing it from the outside and then transitioning to somebody who's, now got a vote on how it progresses further. So it was already in motion when I was elected and was, at the table. The reality is, and I've done some research, I did some traveling to a brownfields conference. I wanted to, fill my brain with as much information on this type of thing as possible. Ultimately, Centennial Park is a brownfield, and if we can recognize that it was basically an industrial waste site, that's the facts. That's the reality of it. It's a brownfield, and that project ultimately should be called, instead of it was a park renovation or whatever people like to call it, and that's great. I don't discredit people for saying that. What it really was a brownfield remediation. It became an issue because stuff was bubbling up from underneath the ground. That's a problem, and it became public. It became public not just locally, but it became public around the world, which means if you do nothing about it, then Sarnia is the place that has a toxic park that they just turn a blind eye to.
Right.
So ultimately, nobody really, realistically, could have just turned a blind eye to this and walked away. Otherwise, your city is, forgive my word choice here, tarred with a bad image. But the Councillor Couch eloquently described the process with the last council, and what happened was they originally had quotes that were somewhere up and around the $10 million mark anyway. The council of the day said, okay, but let's try and do it for about half that. So despite what the experts were saying at the time, the council said, and I get it, it's politics, we should really try and not spend that kind of money on it. Let's do it for less. The problem is you set yourself up for failure. The reality is they were saying it was going to cost that much. It basically cost that much in the end, despite all of these supposed cost overruns. In fact, all it really did was take us back to what was originally expected to be spent on the park in the first place. That's not spin, that's for the record. It's stuff I learned along the way as I'm sharing that information now, and other people are learning that right now too. There were a few extra $1 million in infrastructure expenditures that get lumped together with that park. Eventually those infrastructure repairs were going to be needed, whether or not they were done at the same time as Centennial Park. The reality was, when you do that kind of remediation and you're trying to contain toxic waste in the ground, you don't want to have to dig it up again 10 years later if there's a leaky pipe. Right. That leaky pipe could have caused some serious damage or whatever. So the choice was made then to put the money also into the infrastructure that was under the ground, that technically had nothing to do with the park remediation, but was an additional expense that we had to face all at the same time. So that's where we got to about $13 million. Okay. Stage location, yeah, I get it. I don't love it necessarily. I as a musician playing on that and having the sun, That's fair. Not everything's going to be perfect. And what I do like about that park though right now is that people are enjoying it. People are coming to it. People are showing that, you know, there's room to grow in there. And as a template, as something that we can build up from, we've got a great model that we can grow. We have pictures of Centennial Park from the 80s that don't look anything like Centennial Park in the 90s. And in the year 2000. Centennial Park was always evolving. This will continue to evolve, and as needs arise, hopefully we can raise some money and address those needs.
That'd be cool to see the progression of the 80s, 90s into the 2000s.
Yeah. It looked a lot different when I was a kid, and you know what? It's nice to hang on to everything you had as a kid too, and I get that. I'm as nostalgic as anybody, and I'm a pack rat, so I get it. But things change, and it will continue to evolve. And as people say, hey, you know what? We have an issue with, boom. Well, then it was better we didn't spend a pile of money not knowing that wasn't an issue on something else to make sure that we had enough money available to deal with what was actually an issue.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. So part 3, where are we at for time here? Oh, we're gonna give you a couple minutes to talk specifically about what you believe are the most important issues that the city of Sarnia is facing. And so I guess just in general, tell me about your platform now for 2018, city and county.
Well, platform's a funny word, so I don't want to stray too far. Platform is a tough thing to fulfill in a municipal election.
Well, let's say your issues.
My goals, my features. So I just
Well, that's fair. Yeah, that's
but
fair.
and I only say that because I'm sharing my perspective on this, rather than coming in and saying I've got 5 bullet points, and I did the 5 bullet points 4 years ago, and I think I've reached all of them, and that was fine. Yeah. But what I've also learned in 4 years is that working as a collective, working as a team, addressing issues as they come up. 6 months from now, we're going to be dealing with an issue, should I be fortunate enough to get elected, that isn't even on our radar right now. So my overall goals are to continue the progressive work that we've done. We've seen a significant amount of investment in this community in just the last couple of years. We've got some pretty major developments coming downtown, Tricars with 2 buildings, the Bayside Mall, the Vine Street School, St. Peter's School. These are all things that show that we're open for business, and we're also open for densification and redevelopment of the core areas of our city. So one of my major goals is to continue with that trend, and to make sure that Mitten Village is successful in a revisioning process that we're now beginning as a city. That's one of my major goals. Another major goal is to address some accessibility issues on the Golden Mile. We've got a lot of students that live down that way that come to Lambton College. We've got a lot of folks of a socioeconomic class that depend on public transit that isn't necessarily available to them, and a lot of them are walking down a very dangerous road and don't have access to shopping districts. Now, that sounds pie in the sky, but that's a huge project and it's a huge issue to undertake. So I would like to work towards that, and that's where working as a member of County Council will come in helpful. Because that's going to take some coordination and cooperation between the 2 councils. Right. And finally, overall accessibility and active community living. I think it's really important that we continue with the revisioning of our parks and making sure that they're necessarily not necessarily perfect, but that they are ready to build upon with the demographics of today. So the parks that made sense in 1956 don't necessarily make sense in 2018. Right. So as part of this revisioning process that again that we're currently under, I want to continue to make sure that not only do we move forward with that revisioning process, but that once we finally get the results of that, which often I've seen in the past, we get results from experts, we've done public engagement, and then we put $0 behind it, and then we sit there with a master plan that does nothing. It collects dust. Right. So I want to make sure that we follow through and make sure that our parks and recreation, facilities, our assets, our arenas, our pools, parks, are all there functioning and serving the public for 2018 and the next 20, 30 years, rather than what they were supposed to be 20, 30 years ago.
Right. Okay. So at the city and county level, you've got some pretty good candidates that you're running against. So kind of I, for one, and I know there's many who feel the same way, we haven't decided yet who we're going to vote for. So why should I vote for you?
Well, hopefully you can vote for me because, or you'll choose to vote for me based on my track record of following through and doing what I say I'm going to do, and obviously approaching every issue with a completely open mind. There are many times I've gone into that council chamber with my mind basically made up, and it's been changed while I've been sitting in that chair because of good, healthy debate, because I'm there to listen not only to the experts on staff but to my colleagues on council, to be able to absorb that information, check my ego at the door, and make a decision that's based solely on making the city a better place. And that's my intention moving forward, especially at the county level. It's going to take me a little bit of time out there working with a new group of people to try and have them trust me enough to understand that that's what my real motivation is. But as a voter, I would hope that you've seen that that's the way I've demonstrated myself, and that I will continue to do so and bring a vision. I think we can do so many great things together, not just in the city of Sarnia, but whether we like it or not, we are part of a collective as well. And I think that continuing to build good relations with our county partners will only make all of us more prosperous in the end.
Okay, great. So that's it for questions that I had for you, but I just wanted to kind of give you the opportunity, if there's anything that I may have missed that you would like to add. What's kind of your final message for the people who are watching?
Well, thank you. Really, this is probably one of the most important municipal elections we've had in a long time. And I don't say that for any negative reasons. I say that because we've got so much more engagement than ever before. We've got people that are watching online. We've got people filling the galleries. We've got, I think, a much better understanding as a community as to what responsibilities are actually covered by not only the city government but by the county government as well. So my main message is take the time. If you don't understand quite how things work, take the time. We've still got time. We've got lots of time before the election. Take the time, ask the questions of me and everybody else. I'm always available, but most importantly, I think this is the most important election we've seen in a long time here. Simply because we've got so many new things that we could be capitalizing on. We've made great progress together, and we've got great opportunities at our doorstep. There are people waiting to invest in this community, and it's really important that we continue on that path and make sure that we can follow through so that we can provide the great services that people expect of a city, and so that we can try some new things and attract some new people.
All right, great message. So again, I'm Katie Horvath, Citizen of the City. This has been Brian White. If you like what Brian has to say, vote for him. Polls open online and by telephone October 11th through to October 22nd. Thank you for watching.